Well, during his address to the country last Tuesday, the president noted something interesting. He said, a lot of the richest people in our society have been lecturing us recently about a wall across the Mexican border that's immoral, they're telling us. Even as they're saying that, they're building walls around their own homes. That's what he said. It's a good line. Is it true? Well, Benny Johnson, the Daily Caller, decided to find out. He's embarked on a Walls Across America tour to find the fortifications that surround the homes of our leaders. His first stop, naturally, was Barack Obama's house right here in Washington. Johnson couldn't get close to Obama's home due to concrete barriers and police officers surrounding the entire area. Apparently, security in D.C. don't know that concrete barriers don't work. People just bring taller ladders. Johnson's next stop was George Soros' mansion in Southampton, New York. Soros has not heard about how walls don't work either. He thinks they still do, and that's why he's surrounded his own place with a 10-foot-high concrete wall with cameras on it. Amazing. This investigation continues, and of course, we're deeply interested in what it finds. Well, the geniuses on cable news have spent years speculating that Donald Trump is a puppet of Vladimir Putin, and now they know for sure the Manchurian candidate is real. A Russian spy occupies the Oval Office.
The evidence suggests, indeed, Trump has been a pawn of the Russians, of Putin.
The fact that he said yesterday, I've never worked for Russia, just made you think over and over again about our two previous presidents embroiled in potential impeachments. Bill Clinton and Richard Nixon saying, Bill Clinton, I never had sexual relations with that woman, and Richard Nixon, I am not a crook. Turned out they were lying. Maybe Donald Trump is too.
But when you start to see a pattern where he basically spouts Putin's lies, then we have to ask the most unusual and frightening question about our own president.
Why this president seems to be putting Russia's interests ahead of our own.
So if you're watching at home, you may be asking yourself, how did the people on TV get so dumb? And the truth is this, you're driving to the studio to do your little TV hit and you're thinking, what am I going to say? And you come up with a line and you think it's kind of clever, but you don't run it by anybody else. And instead you just emit it on the air and therefore humiliate yourself. That's what you just saw. Because the evidence we just heard was, let's see, Trump denies he worked for Russia, therefore he must have. Meanwhile, former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, did everything he could to deplete the public's confidence in the holders of that office. He is very confident, though, that Trump is a spy because he's not really sure why, but he's very confident. Watch this.
It is amazing. It's explosive, but it's not really surprising. It just seems to me that the FBI, taking its counterintelligence responsibilities seriously, would want to look into what's going on here, and is there influence, whether witting or unwitting, by the Russians over President Trump? And you know, in the intervening year and a half or so, you know, his behavior hasn't done much, at least in my mind, to allay that concern. So I think the FBI was justified.
That's the man who lied to the Congress under oath about how he wasn't spying on you, but was in fact spying on you. Buck Sexton is a former CIA analyst. He's now at the Hill. He joins us tonight. Buck, thanks a lot for coming on. So a serious question. This seems legitimately irresponsible to me for people in authority to talk like this, to allege something like this when they don't really have any evidence that it's true. What's the long-term effect of talking like this on the agencies these people say they're trying to protect?
Well, Tucker, there are these very senior government officials that you'd like to think going forward, any president, not just this president, could rely on for some degree of professional ethics and discretion. I mean, when you have a sitting president, as we do right now, who is being accused of treason by a former intelligence chief, John Brennan, who's being accused of the most unethical, wild behavior, being an agent of Russia, and the long-term ramifications of that are just that people who are going to hold that office, the presidency, are going to say, well, is every conversation I have with this intel chief, Tucker, I come from this community. They're supposed to be nonpartisan, objective professionals, kind of like journalists, but that's another conversation. But they're supposed to be serving their country and the mission first and foremost. And these are political actors in a way that are going to change the relationship the presidency has with these organizations. And also on your point about the evidence, by the way, we have had now 2 years of a special counsel, give or take a few months, using the most sophisticated surveillance apparatus in the history of mankind We're also told that Donald Trump is incompetent, doesn't know anything, doesn't understand anything. And we have no hard evidence of him being a Russian agent. This is a mass delusion now that's being perpetuated by people who should know better. But Tucker, I actually believe a lot of them now don't. I think that they have engaged in this public self-immolation of their credibility because they've come to believe it.
The message, if you take a few steps back, is that the unelected bureaucracies, the agencies in the executive branch, are more powerful than the elected president. That's what I'm concluding. That's the opposite of democracy, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And when you saw this New York Times story that broke and people said, oh, here we go once again, Russia, Trump, now we know that they're the FBI. Yeah, the same FBI that, by the way, has had people fired for cause, by the way, from the top reaches. At least one former senior FBI agent, McCabe, may be facing criminal prosecution for lying about how he was conducting himself here. So there's been bad behavior at that FBI. But, Tucker, they're pointing to Trump and saying, oh, because, and remember, this is just a small group at the top of the organization. This is not the rank and file.
Right.
They're saying that Trump was acting against the national security interests of the United States. So they needed to investigate him because of that. Meanwhile, firing James Comey is just good business. That's a good idea based on everything that we've seen. And also, it's dangerous for bureaucrats to think that they determine what's in our national security interest above the commander-in-chief.
Civilian control of the military, of the federal agencies, is like the cornerstone of democracy. Voters get to make these decisions. They elect someone to act on their behalf. And when people haven't been elected, make it unilaterally, that's not democracy. This is actually scary. Buck Sexton, as always, so incisive. Thank you.
Great to see you, Tucker.